continue, what I realized in presenting this amazing work is that it's really how the transmission of the Dzogchen and the Nyingthig were passed down from, one major student or a group of students to the next. And so the more that we look at this, the more remarkable it is that what we're receiving in terms of teachings have been handed down over time from one ardent practitioner to another. And quite obviously, there is a lot of guidance coming in from different realms, from different spheres. And the guidance is very obvious in terms of the writing from A Marvelous Garland of Rare Gems. So I find that personally fascinating of what it has taken for this transmission to come down through the ages. And so this evening, we will start with Gyalwa Zhangtön Tashi Dorjé, and he lived from 1097 to 1167. And they refer to him as Zhangtang in his chapter. So we'll talk about Zhangtang and then, of course, look at how he passed on and transmitted the Nyingthig teachings. And always remembering the reason that I mentioned to take a look at that extensive reading list that was not a reading list, it's actually accomplishment of Longchen Rabjam, is that Longchen Rabjam, as you know, codified all that we've been talking about into the Longchen Nyingthig. So we're starting to get, I think, a deeper sense of the lineage, the tradition, what it has taken to transmit from one teacher to another. And they use the words completely. So we'll begin with Gyalwa Zhangtön Tashi Dorjé, who is referred to here as Zhangtang. And it begins that when he was 25 years old, he received the great siddha from someone we mentioned in our last session, Trulzhik Seng-gé Gyappa, who bestowed on him the empowerments, teachings, instructions of the Nyingthig cycles of the Dzogchen approach, and they use this word approach, of utter lucidity in their entirety. So here we have this word entirety. So he didn't just get one teaching or another, he got the entire transmission. And again, it's empowerments, it's teachings, it's instructions of the Nyingthig cycles of the Dzogchen approach of utter lucidity in their entirety. So what was Zhangtang's life path to come to this point where Trulzhik Seng-gé Gyappa passed on these empowerments? He was born in Tibet, and he was born in an area called Yardok-gang, and it's described as a large tableland south of Lhasa, where two major rivers, the Sangpo and the Kaichi rivers, are in confluence. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, but on my last trip to Tibet, I did see the confluence of two rivers, and it was just magnificent. how they came together. And at this point, we can also get a sense of the land of Tibet because, Tibet has glaciers and there are the water sources for 5 major rivers of Asia, including the Mekong. So here we have our practitioners and very, they're hardy, beautiful, incredible, and powerful landscapes. So a confluence of 2 rivers coming together. And so when he was at age 11, he met a guru from southern Tibet. His name was Chegom Nakpol, and he received all of the teachings in a single year at the age of 11. And he continued to learn from many teachers, it lists many teachers, until he was 21 years old. And his wisdom blossomed, it said, from many teachers. And he studied the Vinaya, as you know, that's the monks' rules, and the sutras, the words of the Buddha, the Abhidharma, the Buddhist psychology, and the tantras from the Nyingma, and also another school called the Sharma school and the mantra approach. And while he was staying near the Nyang River, southeast of the Sangpo River, and just to clarify, the Sangpo River runs near Lhasa. So when I was on my first trip to Tibet, we followed along on the Sangpo River and then crossed the Sangpo River to go to Samye, the first monastery, and also to go to Chimpuk, which is where, as you know, Longchenpa practiced. So he went to area, the Nyang River, and he stayed in what's called Upper Nyang, and he had a vision. So once again, his name is Zhangtang, and Zhangtang's vision was of all the gurus of the past. So he had a vision of an entire lineage with Dakas and Dakinis, and also Avalokiteshvara, also known as Chenrezig, also Tara, and they all appeared in a massive light, a massive pulsating light, and all of these beings were in the center of the sky, and they made a prophecy to him. And the prophecy said, how marvelous, the direct transmission that brings Buddhahood in a single lifetime, the most secret, unsurpassable cycle of the Dzogchen approach can be found in a cliff that resembles a lion. So here is a reference, and we've talked about the word terma, and terma is when there are hidden teachings that are just for the time and place that they are meant to benefit. So here he has the Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, all of the gurus, the Dakas and the Dakinis, prophesizing that he will go to reveal a terma. And that terma is in a cliff that resembles a lion. So does he get there? And it says when he gets there, they will reveal teachings that will benefit numerable beings, and they will be dispersed. So after this prophecy, there is a man in a white hat that comes along, and he says to Zhangtang that I will grant you a city, go forth. And he didn't say which city, and a blessing, and we don't know. And so Zhangtang went to the lower Nyang Valley, and he met priests in yellow robes who served him food and drink. And so he thought, oh, maybe that's the city. That's where I'm going to find something. But then the man in the white hat showed up again and he said, no, 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 that's not it. Keep going. So then he kept going on his journey and he arrived at a place called Tok Top, and he slept in an empty house. But then the hatted man shows up and he said, no, wake up, don't stay here, keep going. And then he ran out of the house. And as soon as he ran out of the house collapsed. So he wasn't supposed to be there. And then he went further on. And then there was a downpour of rain. And in Tibet, there's not so many shelters. So he went to an overhang of a cliff. And then his mysterious companion, which is another companion now named in the book as his own projection. And his own projection brought him food and drink. And the next morning he traveled on to a place called Oyuk. And the phantom split firewood, brought food and drink. And finally, Zhangtang reached the foot of a cliff that looked like a lion. And this is a super interesting thing to consider, because if these teachings are being passed down based on place and based on termas being buried in caves, in earth, in water, in different elements and mind streams, then of course the preserving of the land is very important. At first, Zhangtang thought he was lost, but then he saw no way out. And finally, he saw that there was fine grass growing over the mouth of a cave, and it was all hidden from view. And so to make sure everything was okay in that cave, he threw a spear inside the cave. And the spear landed with a thud, so he knew everything was okay. There were no wild animals sleeping in there. And it said that when he entered, the walls looked like mandalas. And the mandalas seemed to have been made by snakes and frogs slithering. And then he saw 100 plaques. And this to him indicated the presence of a terma. So he found the place that was prophesied that he would go to, the cave that looked like a lion. And while he was digging to retrieve the terma, the teachings, the man in the white hat appeared again, and he brought food and drink and a lamp. And I'm actually not sure what the lamps would have looked like in the 1000s. But lamps have been mentioned a few times, so there must have been some light source. And then Zhangtang heard a loud voice outside the cave. And the loud voice says, "Is that the emanation that the prophecy hinted I would meet?" And the man in the white hat said, "Wait here, I'm going back to get my elder sister." So he runs off to bring, and this is a word that I know everyone has heard, he brought back who he said was his sister. The book calls a terrifying appearance, with a bloodshot eye, a single fang, And Zhangtang called out, "Is that the emanation prophesied to me?" And the presence says, and it's a wrathful presence, obviously, says, "I am Ekajate." So Ekajate here, for those people doing Longqing Nyingthig practice, for those people doing Longqing Nyingthig Nunzhou, there are the prayer to the heart essence protectors. And the first one is Ekajate. So here we have a protector who is coming to also give guidance. And she's also the protector of the Dzogchen teachings. And in the book, it says she's the protector of mantras. So she says, "I am Ekazate," and she commands him to do 108 Gana chakras. For many of us, we know the word soak, which is a food offering. Gana chakra is a vast accumulation of food, drink, and it includes, when there are Gana chakras, it includes dance and song. And so for him to have 108 Gana chakras, and this also is for a vast accumulation of merit. And so he, and one time actually I went to a retreat where we did 100,000 Gana chakras, and that was a whole retreat with many people, but this is one person doing 108 Gana chakras. And then Ekazate commanded, "Do not speak of this terma for 3 years." And then the white hat person reveals themselves as Vajra Sadhu. And from what I could find is that Vajra Sadhu is yet another protector who, again, in our Longqing Nyingthig Nunzhou book and also in the Longqing Nyingthig practices, is Dorje Lekpa. So here we have that we have a master being guided by Dzogchen protectors. And so then, and it said that Dorje Lekpa helped preserve Dzogchen in Tibet. So in order to do 108 Gana chakras, he did need to purchase food and drink, and of course, he was being very reserved in his travels. And so Ekazate left him 2 pieces of turquoise. And if you've ever been in Tibet or seen maybe even Tibetan dance, turquoise is a prized jewel that is worn with coral and turquoise. So she left 2 pieces of turquoise at the mouth of the cave that had the terma. And so with that, Zhangtang bought 3 packs of barley. And a pack probably was loaded onto yaks, and so that he could transport his barley, and then also some meat. And the meat most probably also was yak meat. So in bringing forth the cachet of the terma, everything came out successfully and in successions. And then he copied the manuscripts. So once again, we see that how we received these teachings, someone word by word wrote down all of these teachings. And also, fortunately, Zhangtang had a patron, and the patron's name was Shakmo Gatso. And that also was, I'm sure, very helpful for him in accumulating the meat and the barley for the Gana chakra, and then being helpful. Then when he was 25 years old, he built a house in an area called Qigong. And then he was on the road to Tarak when he met Sangye Wangchuk. And then Sangye Wangchuk began to bestow all of the teachings to him and gave him the permission to teach with the simple words, ensure the welfare of others. And then that teacher vanished. And Zhangtang then returned to central Tibet, and he was invited by a king. And then one morning, Vimalamitra, and this whole chapter is the lineage of Vimlamitra. So Vimalamitra appeared to him and gave him the permission to teach, and then he too vanished. So it looks like the different teachers and beings show up, do what they need to do, and then go back to where they came from. And then at the age of 61, Zhangtang married, and he married Gyalwa Zhangtön, and it said that they had at least 3 children. And he had a meditation cabin, and it was said that if he hadn't maintained a center, he would have attained the level of no physical remains upon death. Even so, it said that when he walked, his body cast no shadow. Try that one. And at times, he was seen as a mandala of the 5 Buddha families. So that means when he was walking, he had no shadow, and then at times he appeared as the 5 Buddha families. And when he gave Dzogchen teachings, everyone saw rainbow lights and other amazing experiences. And then when he was 71 years old, and it's very interesting, they don't say he died. They said he manifested his passing from his physical body. And at the time of that passing, there was said to be very loud sounds 7 times. There were 3 earthquakes. The sky was filled with pulsating rainbow lights. Sweet cymbals were heard, fragrant perfume, and the shimmering 5 colors. And it said that everyone who witnessed was moved to faith. And when he was cremated, there were 5 marvelous relics of 5 colors, blossoms rained from the sky, and all that were there rested naturally in meditative stability. And as we've mentioned, meditative stability in the Dzogchen tradition is resting in Rigpa. And then he passed on his teachings. As we said, he had 3 sons, to one of his sons. And that son was Drupchen Khepa Nyima Bum. And he lived from 1158 to 1213. So he was the son of Zhangtang and his wife, Gyalwa Zhangtön. And in the womb, she had many signs and many dreams about him. And one of them was that there were many suns rising at once. So when there was a sunrise, there were many suns rising at once. So this was interpreted that he would teach the unsurpassable secret and dispel the darkness of ignorance for countless people. So Zhangtang named his son Nyima Bum, and it means 100,000 suns. And so then, and that of course was connected to his mother's vision. So from the age of 5 to the age of 9, he was taught by his father. So very beautifully that the father was able to pass the teachings on to his son, all the empowerments, the tantras, the explanations, the commentaries, the pith instructions, and the secret Nyingthig cycles. And this phrase that we've heard before, like one vase filling another. And so the unsurpassable secret Vajra essence of utter lucidity without any omission. And this is another important phrase, without any omission. Then at the age of 21, Nyima Bum experienced his father's passing. And he then went on to study with a number of different teachers, including, it said, from a clan who were the disciples of Marpa. And Marpa was the great teacher of Milarepa. So here we see that Nyima Bum, and we also find out from different teachers that they really expanded into other of the Tibetan Buddhist traditions and went to learn, as we'll see here, from Sakya students, from Kagyu students, and so that there was very much a richness in the gathered teachings. At the age of 22, Nyima Bum married. At the age of 27, here's where he studied with a Sakya adept, and he studied the Chakrasambhava. And so then he himself studied in all of the Tibetan traditions. And this is very important because when this all passes on, where Longchenpa is codifying, he's also bringing in and also making those teachings accessible to all traditions. Then at the age of 29, he took a second wife. So apparently there was that tradition of having more than one wife. And then at the age of 30, it said he became a learned, accomplished master in all of the Tantra sutras. And he, at that time, became a master Nyingthig teacher. And later on, he was considered an emanation of Vajrapani, a great deity. And from prophecy, he was called the reverberation of sound. So being from the son of a great master to becoming a master himself, and then to be an emanation of Vajrapani. At the age of 56, he passed away, and it said when he was cremated, there were canopies of light, and that these canopies of light were strewn all over the earth, and there were relics, and small alpine flowers bloomed. And there are areas of Tibet that has very beautiful, natural, wildflowers. So it must be very lovely when all of those bloom, it said, by the funeral pyre. And there were 5 kinds of relics from his cremation, and they manifested out of the ashes. And from these sacred teachings, he passed them on to the next recipient, whose name is Guru Jabbar. And so Guru Jabbar lived from 1196 to 1255. And he was actually the son of the younger brother of Nyima Bum, and he was the son of Dawa Bum. So they were brothers. And Nyima Bum's wife was Gyalmo Ulu. And so then at the age between 8 and 18, Guru Jabbar studied with his uncle. So here you have more training through the family, and he received all the empowerments, teachings, instructions of the unsurpassable secret teachings, and without exception, and again, no exception. And he also spent his time explaining the tantras and pursuing practice. And then when he was 19 years old, he received from the Sakya many teachings and transmissions. And what is interesting, my first trip to Tibet, we were in a bus leaving the airport. It's called the Lhasa Airport, even though it's many miles from Lhasa. And we stopped at a temple, and it was a Sakya temple. And it said that there had been the heart of the, I think, first or second Sakya Lama buried until recently when it was put back into a statue. But in that temple, there was also statues of Padmasambhava and from all the different lineages. So here we're starting to see that the different lineages were all very close, and some would go study with the other. And that is the case with these masters as well. And so then it said that he went to study Madhyamaka, which is the reasoning, the valid cognition. He learned a song of realization from a Nepalese teacher. And then, and that was at the age of 22. He completed his studies, and at the age of 36, his practice gave rise to the meditation deities. And it said that he was in Lhasa and he saw the face of Jowo. And what Jowo is that it's in the Jokang Temple, which is in the heart of Lhasa. There is a very large Buddha called the Jowo Buddha in the main temple, the Jokang in Lhasa. And the first time I went there was 25 years ago. And it's considered a very holy place. And so the Jowo was brought as part of the dowry of the Chinese wife of Songtsen Gampo. And what's interesting is that my second trip to Tibet, we saw many places. Her name was Princess Wangcheng, and many places that she stopped, she would build. It's a very interesting kind of, it's not quite a stupa, but it's piles of blessed rocks. And so the rocks, some of them are inscribed with Om Mani Padme Hung, and some of them have pictures of deities. And she would create these holy structures where she went from her trip from China into Tibet to Lhasa. So I went to actually a couple of different places where she had been, and wherever she went, she tried to set up something very spiritual. And so a couple of places, even all the way to Yushu. Yushu has an incredible area where there's deities, where Princess Wangcheng went and created a very large kind of holy site of these blessed rocks. So Princess Wenchen was actually quite humanitarian in her own right. And there was actually a second Jowo that was brought and left at another temple along the way. So when we have our master, who is Guru Jabbar, and he begins to see visions, and he especially begins to see visions while in Lhasa. and while in the Jokang temple with the Jowo, a Buddha statue. So then he also had a vision of specter of 5 lights, where he saw Vajrasattva, he saw Vajrapani, he saw Avalokiteshvara, and he also saw the protector Amitayus. Now, Amitayus is said to be the protector of long life. So he was very happy about that. And he said that he must have been able to see Amitayus because of his positive enlightened qualities. And he said that he felt this was a good omen and would assure him of a longer life than some of his previous relatives. He died in, these are lunar calendars, so in the year either 1255 or 1256. He was a leader, a teacher, a guide of immense wisdom and inner compassion. And he passed away on a full moon. And then our final teacher of the evening is Trulzhik Seng-gé Gyappa. And so Guru Gyappa was the teacher for him. And so Trulzhik Seng-gé Gyappa received the instructions of the Vajra heart essence of utter lucidity in its entirety. So here again, we have one master passing on the teachings to the next disciple. So it's said that when Trulzhik was born, there was a canopy of rainbow lights over his house. And at the age of 9, he had his spiritual awakening. And it included pure vision. He had natural devotion, and proclaimed at the age of 9, all I see is illusory. Can you imagine at the age of 9? He perceived the world and all appearances and possibilities to be his teacher. So now we have somebody where the teachings themselves are the teacher. And so I'll read that again. He perceived the world and all appearance as possibility to be his teacher. And then at the age of 12, he was disenchanted with samsara. So, and then at the age of 13, he had a dream. And the dream was that the sun and moon rose at the same time. And when he awoke, he saw Avalokiteshvara, the deity of compassion, also known as Chenrezig. And he said, how marvelous, fortunate one, meditate on meaning of the most unsurpassable Nyingthig teachings. This will bring freedom in a single lifetime. So here again, we have the Nyingthig teachings being the cause of freedom in a single lifetime. And as soon as Avalokiteshvara made this prophecy, he too vanished. So again, he said his words and then he is gone. Seng-gé Gyappa said, from then on, his compassion increased, impartiality for all, and he thought of everyone as his only child. And that is very profound because, as we know, the loving kindness meditation begins with understanding that love for one's only child. So he saw all beings as his only child. At the age of 18, he realized that neither appearance, no appearances have any ultimate existence. And he then trained in that. So once again, it's a teaching that is becoming the teacher. The ultimate meaning of natural, occurring, timeless awareness. So he would just train with that phrase. At the age of 20, Seng-gé Gyappa took monastic ordination and he studied the Vinaya. At the age of 25 is when he went to, and apparently there were 3 successive teachers with the same name because it was based on where they lived. So he went to the former Seng-gé Gyappa in an area called Sizal. He received the entire cycle of empowerments and teachings and instructions of Zalpa, and then from Seng-gé Gyappa. And this was the second master. And then a third one, Seng-gé Gyappa, after the place where he lived, the third Seng-gé Gyappa received teachings from the second. And he practiced and requested texts on the utter mind, unity of mind and subtle energy. So the mind and subtle energy, and now we get into practices like the channels and the winds. He also studied Chud, which we know as severance. He studied Mahamudra. He had the complete range of Nyingma sadhanas. And he also studied with another school called the Sarma School. And then he went to study with Guru Jokpa. And he received empowerments and teachings, the Dzogchen approach in its entirety. And he brought many to spiritual maturity. At the age of 64, he passed into primordial basic space. Again, this is another Dzogchen understanding, primordial basic space. He passed into that. And that is the true nature of phenomenon. And when he was cremated, the sky filled with rainbow lights, many relics, images of deities were found in the ashes. And he passed on the Dzogchen teachings to a teacher we've already talked about, Drupchen Khepa Dorjé. So we discussed him last week. So once again, we see how the teachings are passed on, the prophecies, the termas, the help along the way, the protectors, and then the teachings themselves becoming the teacher. So it's a lot. And we also learn the power of the land. And so we're going to stop our recording.
It's a Zoom.
We're going to stop our recording and take questions and answers.